welcome back. I hope you had a wonderful week and you're ready for another Insider. So, last week we spoke about certified translation and the law. So, the things that you should always consider when doing a certified translation. This week we're talking about another thing that sometimes it's a little hard to understand and to get hold of, especially when you're starting out as a translator, which is when you must say no. So stick around. Let's talk about that. At the start of our careers, we all feel a little bit queasy and a little bit uncertain about things, and especially about the way we deal with our clients and what should we say to our clients. One of the things that I believe it's almost like a huge taboo, it's to say or when we should say no to a client, or if it's okay to say no to a client. Most of us at the start, and I know I did this, believe that we should always say yes, because if we say no, the client will never come back, the client will give us bad reviews, the client will think that we are inexperienced or unqualified, all sorts of things. All sorts of thoughts come into mind when you are starting your career and you come across with something as difficult as refusing a project. Because I understand it is difficult to say no to a project. We all want to work. We all need to earn a living, and to say no, it's always something that we think, oh well, I'm losing all this money. But if we're not qualified, for example, if you're not qualified, it wasn't ours to be in the first place, so we should say no. So the thing is, and I think the secret here is to be confident within yourself. It's confident in what you can do and what you cannot do, so you know how to deal and how to approach problems like this. Because it's simple. If you really set these boundaries for yourself from the start of your career, it becomes really easy for you to deal with clients. And if you think, well, this project is not for me, it will become easier to explain your client why you are actually refusing that project, why you're declining that job, because obviously you have a very strong reason to decline that job. It is okay to say no. Sometimes we even must say no. And let's see some examples. For example, if it's out of your scope, if it's out of your specialization, if it's a subject, if it's a topic that you is completely out of anything that you know. Okay, I know as translators we love a good challenge, and that's okay. But sometimes things are really out of our scope, and we have to say no. For example, I'm thinking about legal translation. For example, if you are not a legal translator, accepting a very complex legal contract or a legal document that is going to be presented in a court, that would be very risky, and it would be, in my view, it would be wrong, because it's out of your scope. If you're not a legal translator, if you don't have the right knowledge to be dealing with that sort of documents. And I have done a small course, actually I've done 2 courses about the translation of contracts, so I have that little specialization just in contracts. And I know that, for example, with my language pair, Portuguese and English, the legal systems in both countries, Portugal and, for example, Australia or English-speaking countries, is totally different. So it is important that you know that, because sometimes it's not just the words, it's not just converting a word per word. Sometimes you need to understand that the systems are different and things have different meanings in another language, and you need to find the equivalent process, the equivalent thing. So, for example, this is one of the cases that it's out of your comfort zone, it's out of your scope, and you should say no. We love a challenge. I believe, for example, this is not the type of challenge to accept because it can get you in troubled waters. If you have a legal document that you have not translated appropriately, you may be sued if the client loses any money or if it's proven that they lost any case or money because of a bad translation. You don't want that in your career. You don't want that for yourself. Another thing is when you are not qualified. And there's very, very, very obvious examples. For example, and this is very common. As you know, I am an ARTI certified translator from English to European Portuguese. That's my qualification. However, I often receive calls or emails from possible clients that want documents translated into English. So they have it in Portuguese, and in this particular case, I receive contacts either from Brazilian people and from Portuguese as well. So, and they want things translated into English because they are submitting any sort of application here in Australia. Of course, I cannot do that. Even though I can translate from Portuguese into English, I do not have the NATI certification on that direction. So therefore, I have to refuse those projects because I'm not qualified for them. And I'll have to say politely, I would love to help you with this project, but I'm not qualified for that. And I actually advise the client that when they do the research on NATI, to look for the colleagues that they have the little arrow, the colleagues that have the Portuguese into English for this particular case. Another very, very obvious case is, and this is one of the most famous confusions that is in the language services, is the confusion between translators and interpreters. I think the media helps a lot with this because every single time you hear about something on the news, they always refer to interpreters as translators, and that's wrong. An interpreter deals with oral speech. They convert oral speech in a language into another. A translator, which is my case, deals with written documents. We convert a document written in a certain language into another language. And sometimes, because of all this confusion, and obviously people watch news every day, people watch TV, they read newspapers, and they are taken into this confusion by what is fueled by the media, and they contact a translator. I have had that several times. In fact, I had one of these phone calls last week, and ask if you can help them going into an appointment, blah blah blah, and they need that translated. And you have to tell the client, I'm very sorry, but you are looking for an interpreter, not a translator. I'm a translator and you will be looking for an interpreter. This is actually in our code of ethics. We cannot accept a job we are not qualified for. So these two examples, either it's out of your scope, or if you're not qualified, this is part of this is part of that. If you're not confident about doing that job, if you feel you're not good enough for that job, then you must say no. But then there's other instances when I believe you should also say no, and that's when, for example, you receive a project and the client either the conditions on that project are completely wrong or unacceptable in your view, or the rates that they pay are not in sync with the rates you charge. You think it's too low, you don't want to work for that money, or the deadline is totally unrealistic. One thing I should say, even if it's something like this, even if it's because it's appalling working conditions or very low rates or unrealistic deadlines, never answer a client with disrespect, because that will or may destroy your career. Always be polite. You may just simply say, I'm sorry, I would love to help you with this project, but in fact these rates are very low. They are way below my rates, so I cannot work for this money. Or I'm sorry, but I believe this deadline is way too short, I think, for you to have. And then try to educate your clients as well. Try to explain your reasons, and if you explain, they may understand you, and they actually may come back to you and you say, I'm sorry, but I believe this is a very unrealistic deadline. I think for you to have a quality translation of this amount of words, I believe you should, a reasonable deadline would be such and such. This is a very short deadline, and you may get a low quality job because of it. You know, if you do that, and if you come with a possible solution, if you tell them why you're refusing, for example, if you're not qualified, if you offer them a solution when they look for it on NATI, I'm giving my example, look for an interpreter, look for a translator on the direction of translation that you need, and the client will be appreciative of that, and they will understand, well, this person cannot help me, but in fact he helped me find the right person. So they will acknowledge that, and they may come back if they have something that indeed is for you. This is customer service. People sometimes think that customer service is always say yes, is always comply with whatever the client says. I remember this is more for useful for retail, but a lot of people still have this in mind, and I remember this was like a must in Portugal. The client is always right. Well, the client is not always right. Sometimes you need to tell the client, well, I'm sorry, I cannot do it. I'm sorry, you're wrong. But if we do it with respect, if we explain the reasons why we actually declining the request, and you come up with solutions, if we tell them, well, I would suggest that you do such and such, or I would suggest this, or I would suggest that, the client would be appreciative, and they may eventually come back with another project that is more suitable for you. So think about it. It's okay to say no when it's appropriate to say no. And that's all for today, and that's all for November. It's unbelievable. Year is almost gone. This is our last Insider of November. We'll have our 2-week break, and then I'll come back for another video. So I hope you like this November. I hope you like these ideas and this clarification around certified translation and around dealing with clients, something that I really think is important. But you know, if you have any question, if you are starting your career and you have any question about this, please feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll be more than happy to answer your queries. And I don't know, and maybe come up with a few suggestions of my own. And you know, put a like and subscribe the channel with a little click on the bell, so you get a notification of a new Insider every week or every fortnight. Now it will be a fortnight. Before I go, I would like to thank you all for watching. See you in 2 weeks. Have a good break, and see you then. Bye.